Alright, so we're back, of course, to talk about some Square Enix, and we recently got a financial report for Square Enix for their entire last fiscal year. Square Enix's fiscal year, of course, begins on April 1st and ends on March 31st of the next year. So we just came out of their fiscal year of 2023. We are currently in fiscal year 2024. It's always like a year ahead, even though we're technically not even halfway. Not even technically, we're literally not halfway through 2023 yet. Whatever. Business stuff. And I'm sure it's in like the title, the thumbnail somewhere, but Square Enix is down like across the board. Now certain departments are up, like I think they did really well in like merchandise over the last year or so, but if we're just talking like net sales and profit and stuff like that, like they're in the negative compared to last year. Specifically, their net sales are down 6%, their profit is down 3%, and their digital entertainment revenue is down 12%. And the thing is, when it comes to being like a business, right, that's dealing with millions and billions of dollars, it has a lot of investors. This is never good. Like, your investors never want to see you go negative, especially when one of these numbers is actually down like a double-digit percentage negative. Now, normally when it comes to this stuff, we usually go over like the financial reports ourselves, but I think this time we're just going to kind of look over the Siliconera article on it because they do a pretty good job of breaking this stuff down. So let's hop right into it. Square Enix shared its consolidated financial results for the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2023, going over its sales. According to the official document, the company saw a decrease in net sales from games released compared to the previous fiscal year. On the other hand, merchandise sales increased greatly. In addition, the company showed more interest in investing in AI, blockchain, and cloud-based projects. In the earnings report, Square Enix stated that the net sales in high-definition game releases decreased between April 1st, 2022 and March 31st, 2023, compared to the same period in the previous report. For context, some of the games released this fiscal year were Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Reunion, Forspoken, and Octopath Traveler. So obviously they mentioned this in their financial report, but they actually talk about some of the games that were released in the previous year that obviously was more successful, and some of them are Outriders, Near Replicant, and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, which is kind of sad when you think about it because Outriders was obviously a flop. And in Square Enix's eyes, we talked about it before, like they thought that Guardians of the Galaxy underperformed. But from like the community perspective, the game reviewed very, very high. And in the case of Guardians of the Galaxy, something we talked about when the game was first revealed, something I said in whatever that video was, that the game was probably going to underperform to some level because of Marvel's Avengers. You already had a Square Enix Marvel property that nobody liked. Everybody shit on that game, right? So regardless of what Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be, people were just going to have a bad taste in their mouth, right? And maybe that's what happened. Maybe their expectations were far too high for it. Maybe it was never going to live up to Square Enix's expectations, whatever. But the point of discussing all this is that like they're comparing to the previous year where they had two flops, Outriders and Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was still a better year than this last fiscal year, which is just kind of embarrassing. And you look at the games that they mentioned Near Replicant, Crisis Core Union, and Forspoken. It seems like they're maybe gambling on Forspoken being like very, very successful, which before the early reviews and stuff were coming out for the game, it was insanely hyped, right? But people got their hands on the game and they had problems with it, and maybe that hurt the launch of the game and overall success of the game.
Did I just do that?
The MMO segment also saw a decrease in net sales, which Square Enix pointed out could have been caused due to the lack of new expansion for Final Fantasy XIV. As for the sales decline in games for smart devices and PC browsers, the company only said it was because existing titles showed weak performance. All these areas summed up a decrease of 12.2% compared to the prior fiscal year. Other areas such as book publication and merchandising saw a sales increase of 0.5% and 11.9% each respectively. However, there was a decline in operating income also for both areas with a decrease of 4.8% and 6.5% each. This could have been caused due to higher production costs, advertising expenses, and changes in expected income from the various products. But yeah, obviously Final Fantasy XIV not having some sort of expansion throughout 2022 at some point was going to hurt them financially, right? Final Fantasy XIV has been one of their biggest projects ever. It's been one of their biggest money makers for the last couple of years. It's one of the biggest MMOs in the world. And I'll be honest, when it comes to 14, I am completely ignorant. Is it normal to be this long between expansions? Because Endwalker came out December 2021, right? So we're almost a year and a half since the last expansion for 14. And admittedly, I don't play a lot of MMOs, and I haven't played a lot of MMOs throughout my life, but that just seems like a long time between expansions. Maybe that's normal for this game. The only one I really play consistently is Elder Scrolls Online, and I've taken a lot of breaks between playthroughs of that game. But with Elder Scrolls Online, you're guaranteed at least one expansion a year. And I think sometimes they do 2 expansions a year. They call them chapters. And they get other smaller DLCs. And I know 14 gets smaller updates and DLCs and things like that too. But you are consistently getting at least one expansion a year when it comes to Elder Scrolls Online. I'm not trying to compare the games by any means, but it's just it just seems like such a long time to have to wait for an expansion for 14. And I don't know if that's normal or not. They also mentioned that their merchandise sales were up almost 12%, which is a pretty big increase. I'm not really sure what that is. I know we had some FF7 merchandise come out. They showed off some stuff with the 25th anniversary live stream last year. And I assume maybe 16 also had merchandise and maybe some of the other games they have out there. But I'm not exactly sure what specifically merchandise-wise made it go up so much. In response to these findings, Square Enix made a call to action to prioritize establishing a stable, recurring income. In that sense, the company explained the strategy to date has been to focus on income through MMO, arcade, mobile games, and book publishing, so as to invest the earnings on the development of HD games. Hence, the new approach for a broader expansion will include aggressive research and development efforts and investment in AI, cloud, and blockchain games, stated the company. This news follows previous statements by current Square Enix president Yasuke Matsuda that blockchain games are planned to come in the fiscal year 2024. As a reminder, Matsuda will give his seat in June 2023 to Takashi Kiryu, who has not commented publicly yet about NFTs or blockchain plans. That's actually something we hadn't talked about yet. I meant to do a video on it back whenever it was like first announced that Matsuda was like stepping down, but we did other videos, I'm sure, and I just kind of eventually forgot to talk about it. But yeah, Matsuda is being replaced by Takashi Kiryu, which is kind of interesting. I think he does have a history with like NFTs or blockchain or whatever, but according to Silicon Era, he's not publicly talked about it since like he's going to be taking the role over. But yeah, kind of take away from all that is their plan is to make more money through their MMOs, book publishings, arcades, mobile games, stuff like that, to then invest the money they make from that into their HD games. Their HD games are the big ones, the AAAs, Rebirth 16, stuff like that. What's exciting from all that for me personally is them talking about like doing more with like their book publishing, because their books that they put out are obviously highly regarded, like the Ultimanias for their Final Fantasy games. If you look at something like FF7, like the spin-off books that they have, right, like On the Way to a Smile, Trace 2 Pass, The Kids Are Alright, like those are all highly regarded stories and stuff, and supplemental materials for FF7. Maybe we get more of that stuff in the future. Honestly, I'd love to see Nojima put out another book, if it's possible, between Rebirth and the third game, right? Kind of like we did with Trace 2 Pass, right? Between Remake and Rebirth. It gives us some like history on some characters, but also some future events. Because I know it talks about like the history of like Tifa and Aerith and stuff like that. But also we get like stuff on the cargo ship within FF7, within the Remake universe. That obviously has not happened for us yet. That's going to be happening in the next game. I'm not sure exactly what another book would be. I don't even know who I'd want the book to be about. But as long as it's giving us an expansion and backstory and more stuff for FF7, it's all good. That's more or less like the video in terms of the financial report stuff. And even though like this last fiscal year was obviously in the negative by the end of the year, they're about to have an insanely successful year because we're getting 16 next month, right? And as long as there's no delays, we're going to also get Rebirth within the same fiscal year. So within the same financial report coming out next year around this time probably, they're going to have 16 and 7 Rebirth. I can imagine it's going to be maybe their most successful year. And also, if they end up putting out some sort of expansion for 14 within this fiscal year, like, holy shit, it'll by far be their most successful year. But something I will add to this towards the end of this video here, because we're talking a lot about, Rebirth coming up potentially at one of these gaming events, the fact that investors are seeing them in the negative right now, I think that does add a level of credibility to them wanting to show off the future, wanting to show off Rebirth, right? They got 16 coming out really soon, but what is also coming out down the road, right? Like, they want people to... their investors to not be worried about them being in the negative, right? Obviously, nothing's 100%. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but the fact that everybody's seeing that they're in the negative right now across the board, I don't know. I could see them wanting to drop a trailer just to get the hype back up. Anyways, that's the video, my dudes. Subscribe to if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DavidYT. That's it. Bye. Also, there's Ever Crisis, which I keep forgetting to talk about in our FF7 videos, but that's obviously coming up. This will not be at the PlayStation Showcase because the game's mobile only. They could throw this massive curveball. I know people want it on console. I'm like 99% sure they're not going to put it on console, but maybe they do. I don't know. But this is obviously a mobile game. They just mentioned in that financial report they want to make more money from mobile projects to invest in their HD games. So maybe we could see Ever Crisis at Summer Game Fest. We know there's supposed to be like a beta or closed beta this summer. Who knows if that's actually going to happen. I don't trust anything when it comes to this game. This game was supposed to be out last year. And we got like nothing last year other than a fucking delay to this year, right? So who knows what's going on with this game. But hopefully we get something with Ever Crisis soon because I need some FF7 in my goddamn life.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.